Real Madrid just offered 150 million euros for a player at their city rivals. Atletico Madrid laughed at them on social media. Vinicius Junior is one bad conversation away from leaving for €1 billion. And the man supposed to fix all of this hasn't even had his first training session yet. Welcome to the most chaotic summer in Real Madrid's history. Welcome back to Robert's Football Talk, the channel where we go beyond the headlines and get into what is actually happening inside the biggest clubs in world football. I'm your host, and if you're new here, subscribe right now because this story has everything. Betrayal, billions, a superstar walking out, and a club record bid getting publicly mocked by a rival. Let's go. Here's what you need to understand before anything else. Real Madrid are not just rebuilding a squad this summer. They are rebuilding an identity, a trophyless season, 2 managers in 1 year, dressing room fights that ended with players in hospital, and a fan base that turned on their own players. This is not a club making minor adjustments. This is a club tearing everything down and starting again. And right in the middle of that demolition, 2 of the most explosive stories in European football are playing out simultaneously. The arrival of Julian Alvarez and the departure of Vinicius Junior. Let's start with the bid that broke the internet. Florentino Perez, freshly re-elected as Real Madrid president, had made a campaign promise. He told Madrid's members he would sign a Galactico, a marquee forward to lead the new era under Jose Mourinho. And for weeks, nobody knew who that mystery target was. Then, Real Madrid did something almost unheard of in modern football. They released an official club statement confirming a transfer bid. And the name in that statement? Julian Alvarez. Atletico Madrid's Argentine striker. Their city rival's most important attacking player. The official statement read that Real Madrid had made an offer of 150 million euros to Club Atletico de Madrid for the federative rights of the player Julian Alvarez. 150 million euros, a club record bid. The most expensive offer Real Madrid have ever made for any player in their history. And Atletico Madrid's response? They rejected it immediately. And then, on their official social media account, they posted 5 words aimed directly at their rivals. You make us laugh even more than Barcelona. That is not a rejection. That is a humiliation. Atletico are pointing at that rejection and saying this offer is not even in the same conversation as our valuation. Because it isn't. Julian Alvarez has a 500 million euro release clause. Real Madrid offered 150 million. Atletico looked at that number and decided the funniest thing they could do was post about it publicly. Now, before you ask the obvious question, why would Real Madrid make a bid they knew would be rejected? Understand what is happening here. This is a power move. This is Florentino Perez publicly announcing his intentions. He is telling Atletico, telling La Liga, telling European football, we want Alvarez, and we are willing to pay a record fee. The bid being rejected does not end the story. It starts it. So who exactly is Julian Alvarez? Because if you are asking why Real Madrid are willing to break their transfer record for this man, you need to understand what he has become. Alvarez arrived at Atletico Madrid after leaving Manchester City and immediately became one of the most complete center forwards in Europe. He is not flashy. He does not rely on pace alone or highlight real dribbles. He works, he presses, he links play, he scores in big moments. He won the World Cup with Argentina and was one of the standout players of that tournament. He is gritty, combative, and relentless in a way that suits exactly how Mourinho wants his teams to play. And at 26 years old, he is entering what should be the peak years of his career. The fit with Mourinho is not just stylistic, it is tactical. Mourinho builds his teams defensively first and then launches with speed and directness on the counter. In that system, you need a center forward who can hold the ball under pressure, bring others into play, and finish when the chance arrives. That is Julian Alvarez's entire profile. The spider, as they call him, is exactly what a Mourinho front line needs. Barcelona had also been monitoring Alvarez. They reportedly had a €100 million bid rejected just last week before Real Madrid entered with their record offer. But Barcelona's financial situation means they simply cannot compete in this market. Real Madrid are the only club who can realistically make this happen if Atletico eventually move. And here is where this story connects directly to Vinicius Junior, because Madrid do not just want Alvarez to strengthen their attack. In the minds of some at the club, Alvarez is the insurance policy for a Vinicius departure. Now let me ask you something before we go further. Do you think Real Madrid should keep pushing for Alvarez, even if it means going above €200 million? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what the Roberts Football Talk community thinks about this one, because here is the situation with Vinicius, and it is genuinely alarming if you are a Real Madrid supporter. Vinicius Junior scored 22 goals and provided 10 assists this season. He has won 2 Champions Leagues for this club. He has 113 goals in 352 appearances, more than Ronaldo Nazario, more than Gareth Bale, more than Ivan Zamorano. He is arguably the best player in the world right now, and he is leaving, not officially. Not yet. But every single thing happening around him this summer points in one direction. His contract expires in 2027. Contract talks stalled after the club refused to match his wage demands. Vinicius wanted his salary equated to Kylian Mbappe's. The club said no. In the last round of talks in May 2025, Madrid offered him approximately €20 million per year. Vinicius asked for 10 million more in bonuses. The talks collapsed, and since then, nothing. No new offer on the table, no breakthrough coming. And a World Cup in North America about to begin, where he will be the centerpiece of Brazil's entire campaign in front of a global audience. While all of that is happening, Saudi Arabia are sitting in the background with the most extraordinary contract offer in the history of sport. Al Hilal prepared a €300 million transfer budget specifically to bring Vinicius to Jeddah. The contract on the table is worth a staggering €1 billion over 5 years. That is not a salary. That is a nation state saying, we want the face of world football and we will rewrite the economics of the sport to get him. Representatives from the Saudi fund had already traveled to Madrid to meet with Vinicius's representatives in person. They did not send emails. They got on a plane. Now here is the thing about Vinicius and the Saudi offer. He has not said yes, but he has not said no either. And that silence is a negotiating position. He is letting that offer sit there like a gun on the table, while Madrid try to work out what they are willing to pay. Sources close to the player say talks will not reopen until after the 2026 World Cup. That means Vinicius enters the tournament in the final year of his contract with no extension agreed, a record's Saudi offer in his pocket, and a new manager whose relationship with him began in the worst possible way. Let's talk about Mourinho and Vinicius, because this is where the story gets really dark. Back in February, Mourinho was still managing Benfica when Real Madrid visited Lisbon for a Champions League knockout tie. Vinicius scored a sensational goal. He celebrated. And then he alleged he was racially abused by Benfica's Gianluca Prestiani. UEFA activated their anti-racism protocols. The match was stopped for 10 minutes. Several players left the pitch in protest. And Mourinho went to the microphone. Instead of standing with the victim, Mourinho questioned him. He said, "Why celebrate like that? The same thing always happens in so many stadiums." He suggested Vinicius had incited the crowd. He then brought up Eusebio being black, as though that settled anything. UEFA eventually handed Prestiani a 6-match ban. But the damage Mourinho did with those comments was not something a 6-match ban could fix. Vinicius didn't forget. The players in that dressing room who have stood by him through years of racial abuse, who have rallied around him, who have watched him carry those wounds for the entirety of his career at this club, none of them forgot either. And that is the man who just became Vinicius's manager. Now, subscribe to Robert's Football Talk if you haven't already. We break this stuff down deeper than anywhere else. Hit the button right now. We're about to get into why Vinicius's form this season made everything even worse. Because here is something that gets buried under the contract talk and the Mourinho drama. Vinicius had a bad season, a genuinely bad one. His form dropped off a cliff in the first half of the campaign. He went months without a goal. The Bernabeu faithful, who once adored him, started whistling him. Not opposing fans, his own supporters. Polls published by Spanish newspaper Marca suggested that 84% of Real Madrid fans would be willing to part ways with him. 84%. For a player who won 2 Champions Leagues for this club. A player who was the best baller on the planet not long ago. Line. The fan base had turned. And when your own supporters start whistling you, when your form dips, when your contract talks stall, and when the incoming manager publicly blamed you for your own racial abuse, the combination of all of that is suffocating. Vinicius played 33 matches under former coach Xabi Alonso, but finished only 9 of them. The most high-profile flashpoint came in the Clásico against Barcelona in October, which Madrid won 2-1. Vinicius was substituted midway through the second half. His reaction was visible to everyone watching on television. The glare, the walk to the bench, the body language that said everything. He posted an apology on social media, but pointedly did not mention his coach by name. ESPN reported that Alonso had planned to leave Vinicius on the bench in the Club World Cup semi-final against PSG and only changed his mind when a late injury to Trent Alexander-Arnold forced his hand. Think about what that means. The player who delivered Champions League glory to Real Madrid left out of a semi-final because his own coach did not want him. When Alonso was eventually sacked, Vinicius was one of the only players in the squad who did not post a farewell message on social media. The silence said everything. So when Mourinho arrived, Vinicius was already wounded, already in a contract standoff, already whistled by his own fans. The last thing he needed was more conflict. And what he got instead was the one man in football who has spent his entire career specializing in exactly that. Here is what makes the Vinicius situation the single most important storyline of this entire summer. Some inside Real Madrid believe there is no future for both Mbappe and Vinicius as a duo at this club. And of the two, it is Mbappe who holds the higher standing with Florentino Perez. Perez paid over 180 million euros to bring Mbappe to Madrid. He is not moving Mbappe for anyone, which means if a choice has to be made, Vinicius is the one who ends up without a chair when the music stops. 22 goals this season, 2 Champions Leagues, 113 goals for the club, and still the one who might be shown the door. That is why Julian Alvarez matters so much in this story. He is not just a transfer target. He is a signal that Real Madrid are preparing for a future where Vinicius Junior is no longer wearing white. What do you think happens here? Does Vinicius stay and sign the new deal, or does he take the €1 billion and go to Saudi Arabia? Let me know in the comments right now. This is exactly the kind of debate Robert's Football Talk exists for. Now let's talk about what Mourinho actually inherits when he walks through the doors of Valdebebas and what his plan appears to be. He is not arriving cautiously. He has already submitted a list of up to 10 players he wants gone. Ferland Mendy, Eduardo Camavinga, Rodrigo Goes, Raul Asensio, Dani Ceballos, Fran Garcia, Franco Mastantuono, goalkeeper Andriy Lunin, and depending on what happens with the contract situation, potentially Vinicius himself. That is not a squad rebuild, that is a demolition. But Mourinho is also building. He wants defensive reinforcements. If Perez wins the club's elections, Denzel Dumfries and Ibrahima Konate are mentioned as marquee defensive targets. Nico Paz returns from loan. Mourinho has requested Arsenal's Ricardo Calafiori as his starting left back. And to replace Camavinga in midfield, Mourinho wants João Gomes of Wolverhampton Wanderers. Gritty, combative, a ball winner who presses without mercy. That is the Mourinho profile exactly. And then there is Alvarez. If Real Madrid can find a way past Atletico's resistance, whether through an improved bid or by activating that 500 million euro release clause in stages, Alvarez becomes the center forward of Mourinho's new project. The spider in the middle, Mbappe wide, and the space where Vinicius once played filled by whoever is next. Sources told ESPN that Madrid are ready to be more active in the transfer market than they have been in recent years, and are no longer dismissing the possibility of January signings. That is a significant cultural shift for a club that has for years operated with patience and exclusivity. Mourinho is tearing all of that up. Quick reminder, subscribe to Robert's Football Talk and share this video with a football fan who needs to see it. We are building something special here, and every single subscriber matters. Now let's zoom out and ask the real question hanging over all of this. Can Mourinho actually fix Real Madrid? Because history at this club is not on his side. His first spell from 2010 to 2013 produced one of the greatest La Liga seasons in history. Most points in a single season. Most goals. Best goal difference. In 2011-12, they were genuinely unstoppable, but the tenure ended in acrimony. He picked fights with referees, with opponents, and eventually with his own players. He described 2012-13 as the worst season of his career. His behavior had alienated a significant portion of the dressing room. History has a habit of repeating itself at the Bernabeu. Perez believes Mourinho is the kind of character who has the personality to sort this dressing room out once and for all. Not the prettiest football in Spain, not the most progressive tactics, just a man with enough authority to make 25 elite footballers listen and enough ruthlessness to remove the ones who won't. The players who stay will be the ones who embrace the new order. The ones who resist, who push back, who feel the club owes them something, they will find themselves frozen out faster than they can pack their boots. But here is the complication that nobody can plan around. If Vinicius does stay, if the contract gets done, if the Mourinho relationship somehow works, Real Madrid could have Mbappe and Vinicius and Alvarez in the same attacking unit. That is not a football team. That is a statement to the entire world. And if Vinicius leaves, Mourinho still has Mbappe, Alvarez, if the deal eventually goes through, the returning Nico Paz, and a defense being rebuilt from scratch. A different kind of Real Madrid, more structured, more disciplined, less reliant on individual genius, and more built around collective organization and ruthless transition play. Both versions of this team could win things, but only one of them has Vinicius Junior. And the world has spent the last 5 years watching what Vinicius Junior can do to a football match. The World Cup in North America starts soon. Vinicius will be the centerpiece of Brazil's attack. Their best chance at a trophy in a generation. How he performs there will define everything. A dominant Vinicius at the World Cup is a Vinicius who comes back with maximum leverage. The contract talks, the Saudi offer, the Mourinho dynamic, all of it gets recalibrated by 6 weeks of football in front of a global audience. And then we find out whether he stays or whether the phone rings from Jeddah and he finally picks up. He said the words. He said, "Real Madrid is the club of my dreams." He said he has confidence in the president. He said they will complete the renewal at the right moment. But a player whose contract runs out in 12 months, whose wage demands remain unmet, whose incoming manager publicly questioned him on one of the most painful nights of his career, and who has a historic €1 billion offer sitting untouched in his back pocket, that player is not anchored. He is calculating. And Julian Alvarez, standing across the city at Atletico Madrid, is waiting to find out whether Real Madrid come back with a bigger offer. Whether Mourinho decides he needs the Spider to replace the Brazilian. Whether the most chaotic summer in the history of the world's most famous football club ends with one superstar leaving and another arriving. The bid has been made. It has been rejected. But this story is nowhere near finished. That is the full breakdown, ladies and gentlemen. Vinicius on his way out. Alvarez bid rejected, but the pursuit continuing. Mourinho rebuilding before he has even started. And a dressing room that could look completely unrecognizable by the time the new La Liga season kicks off. What is your prediction? Does Vinicius stay or go? Does Alvarez end up in white? Drop everything in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know what you think. This has been Robert's Football Talk. Hit that like button, share this with every football fan you know, and subscribe if you haven't already. New videos dropping every week, and trust me, this Real Madrid story is only going to get bigger. I'll see you in the next one.